So our next game is Mischief Makers. It was nominated by @CrowTRobot, who is, I think, my favorite of the Mystery Science Theater robots, so congrats there. It was developed by Treasure. It was published by Nintendo in the US and in the EU, and Enix in Japan, interestingly. It was available on the N64, and that would have been on June 22nd in 1997 in Japan. So this is our second Treasure game that we're looking at on this specific recording as kind of a Treasure celebration, I guess, which is why we have two Treasure games.
Yeah,
and we're looking at...
Yeah. 25th anniversary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little late for that, but, you know, that's thought that counts.
We're trying, you know. So what this one is, it's probably, I think, I want to say Treasure's second or third least regarded game.
Really? I don't know.
Compared to Silhouette Mirage and Stretch Panic and all those bad sequels they did?
Other than, like, the games that are kind of completely forgettable, this is, like, kind of like... If you were to take the Treasure games that you actually care about, this is towards the bottom, but it's in there. You know, I think Stretch Panic is sort of the cutoff point where you're like, oh, maybe we forget about the rest of them. But Mischief Makers is this one of two N64 games they made, or did they make more N64 games?
Just this and Sin and Punishment.
Wait, no, they also did Bangai-O for the N64.
Oh, right.
Kind of different from the DC.
But they were so late. Okay, so if you had an N64, this was the only Treasure game you got in the US and the EU, because we didn't get literally anything else. So that's a weird one.
Weird if you think about it, because this is probably the least accessible to American gamers.
Yeah, because N64 emulation blows. Come on, people, get on it already.
But I mean different in the sense that, you know, the other two are shooters, so...
This game is so strange. I can't believe how strange this game was. I saw this game when I was younger, you know, when I owned an N64 and that sort of thing. And you'd see it in secondhand bins a lot, and on rental shelves and stuff, because it was, you know, right in the, you know, middle of the life before, you know, there were lots of good games. Mischief Makers was there, and so this game was this thing did pretty well and was always around. And it's so weird. I didn't realize how strange this game was mechanically.
Yeah. Mischief Makers is totally bonkers. I mean, technically, it's defined as an action platformer, but it feels like it goes into a new genre every third level or so. So, where do we even begin with this?
Weird way of playing it, but this feels definitely like Treasure's most console video game.
I think the closest game I compare this to is Dynamite Heady, and that's not quite the same thing.
Because this game does have a lot of mechanics that are similar to Heady, in that you have the ability to grapple with things, and you shake.
Yep, and shake to get the gems.
Someone on the dev team thought Huniwas were freaking awesome, so everything has creepy ass Huniwa eyes, and it's.
I gotta be honest. I kind of think this isn't a Treasure's best looking game.
Mostly, I'm gonna be honest, this is probably the ugliest looking game.
Okay, good. I didn't want to say that.
This is very close to the ugliest looking N64 game.
Listen, just beyond the Huniwa faces on absolutely everything, and the fact that you have buildings and other things and trees and such represented as just collections of these faced blocks. There's also the fact that it has that Donkey Kong Country pre-rendered look for everything.
Ooh. That is the least holding uppiest graphical style in the history of forever. And it was only for like a brief period in the middle of the 90s, but oh man.
It also came back for the GBA, I hate to say.
Ew, yeah, no kidding.
And they also, the character sprite is a different resolution to all the other sprites in the game, just to make your eyes even more confused.
And even the animations are really lacking. Like, for example, you often want to chain your boosts together, and it looks terrible because instead of like some really nice running animation or even a Mega Man X style sliding the dash, it's this, and the dash animation is this really short forward movement that keeps repeating over and over again.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing has this strange. It actually does remind me. I know you said it's fun, kind of feels console-y. It actually reminds me a bit of like a Windows 95 XP sort of shareware platformer in a lot of ways. It just has that both that aesthetic touch and also like it just feels a little bit more kind of hapstance slapped together. Like also more like Treasure were like, okay, we're gonna make a game about grappling and you're gonna shake things and it's gonna be about using short range jets and getting flung around. And then they designed the game exactly like that and then just kind of shoved the graphics and the plot and even kind of like the way the game plays into that idea. So it's a very difficult game to kind of get a good feel for. It probably will click at some point, but until it does, you'll be like, and you'll just fall all over the place.
It doesn't help matters that the game doesn't even really get going until the third world.
I think they did that deliberately because they didn't trust that you'd learn very quickly, and I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, the entire first world almost does feel like a tutorial, except that, like, worm thingy you fight, there aren't really any bosses that I remember. And then the second world is mostly just a lot of lava everywhere, as I remember. It was...
yes, the floor is lava.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a test of your platforming skills, but it's not really of the whole grabbing mechanic.
I have to wonder, though, for how weird this game looks, like, how did I find it attractive enough to actually purchase as a kid back in the day?
The main character design is pretty good.
Yeah, Marina Lightyears is awesome.
Anything that's not clan so is typically a really nice design.
Now, yeah, Marina herself, really rad. Definitely, I think, Tezuka inspired, or maybe a bit Toriyama in her design with the green hair and whatnot.
And she feels a bit like an anime Rayman.
Hey, it's not a bad comparison.
I keep thinking someone from the OVA, a character from the OVA boom of the late 80s, early 90s myself.
Yeah, she looks like...
You can get that feel. There's shoulder pads and stuff.
Yeah, if she were... this is going to be a really awful statement for me, but if she were a bit more scantily clad, she looked like she'd be right out of Studio Gainax. But, you know, her creator, Dr. Theo, is always perving on her, and she has to throw him like half across the world. What the hell's up with that running gag, anyway?
Help me, Marina.
I think this game just wants to be as deliciously 80s, 90s anime as possible without any logic behind it. It's just crazy and balls out and just inspired by the Japanese animation of the time.
Speaking of which, I mentioned this with Store Successor, and I think it applies here as well, is that the overall feel of the story and atmosphere is kind of like tuning into a long-running show without having seen the first episode. Like, the way everyone knows who Marina is, or the end of a level cutscene.
This one feels like that's a lot more deliberate. Like, they basically had created a fake, anime sort of plot and world, and then they had just taken a chunk of that and just made that into a game. Because it feels like that,
It's like a licensed game for a show that doesn't exist.
Good way of putting it.
Okay, now on to some of the other good points, though. This being a treasure game, it does have some awesome bosses once you get to them.
Sadly, it takes a while to get to them. At least, like, at the end of the second world, which can take about less than an hour.
Like, funding the Justice Soul Warriors, which I'm pretty sure are meant to be a throwback to Alien Soldier. That all of them have some really cool designs. They get these cool transforming robots that bring to mind Seven Force. They've even all done that same animation style where mechanical parts all separate sprites. Though definitely the one graphical element in the game that's held up fairly well.
Yeah, the beast sector in question, Mirko the Falcon, he pretty much is the hero of Alien Soldier Epsilon Eagle. I didn't even realize that when I finally got around to playing Alien Soldier. And yeah, I almost wish there were a few more bosses in the game, but what they have is pretty rad. The giant machines themselves and how they all combine at the end for the final boss, and that really weird fight against that spooky-ass monolith where you have to take really bad words and shake them into good ones and then throw them at the monolith. That's pretty creative, I gotta say. Although to get to, like, the best bosses, you do have to beat a decathlon or whatever midway into the game. If I don't know if we wanted to get to that bit so soon. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the core of the game, isn't it? Like, if you look at something, as you've been mentioning, Alien Soldier, in Alien Soldier, you spend, like, what, like, I don't know, like, 20 seconds, and then the game starts. Like, you know, it's like, you start, boss, a little bit more boss, a little bit more boss. Like, you have no time to, you barely even acclimate to the game being turned on before you're into the Alien Soldier good bits. Whereas this game is like, yeah, after an hour or two, we'll give you the good bits, and then the game will end relatively soon after that, as far as these games go. Like,
yeah. This game is less of a boss rush and more of a situation rush. Like, a lot of those are really short and just long enough to show off, like, one thing, then you're done.
That's actually a good way of putting it.
Instead of score mechanics, the game is mostly based around time.
Right, you're given a rank from A to D or whatever, depending on how much time you take.
And, like, a lot of Marina's abilities are based more on clearing levels as quickly as possible rather than combat.
Right, and the game, I don't think you've got collectibles in the levels, but not many, so you're encouraged to get through the level very quickly.
Oh, more importantly, it's actually one collectible, a golden gem, and once you collect it, it's yours forever. You can just replay the level and go for time.
Yeah, the golden gem
this game is yes,
primarily for bragging rights, but it does let you see more of the ending of the game, which is kind of strange. It's like, you have to work to get the ending in the first place, but then you have to work double hard on this other factor to see more of it. Strange, I gotta say.
And then Jack and Daxter would do that for no reason.
And admittedly, a lot of the gold gems are hard to find without a guide.
Yeah, the one in 5-3 I struggled with forever. I don't even know how I found it. I think you just have to, like, shake every single clancer you can grab or whatever. I don't even remember.
I think that's the longevity the game is bringing to the table, though, is hiding these gems and trying to convince you to find them.
It kept me playing for a while, so damn it, you bastards, it worked.
And, what's it? There was another thing, also, perhaps some of the hardest guns to get are the gold gems from the bosses, which require you to beat them without taking a single hit.
Yeah, ironically, I found this the hardest for the first Beast Sector machine, Cerberus Alpha, which moves really fast and he's got, like, machine gun fire spraying everywhere. The other two, like, hit harder, but their attacks are a little easier to see coming. But Cerberus is just... it must have taken me, like, 30 tries to finally get. It's pretty vicious. As I remember. But, you know, I think just beating the game straight, for the most part, isn't too challenging. But if you want to get every gold gem, yeah, that's a challenge. I don't know what the hardest part in the entire game would be considered, to be honest, though. Because, you know, the action's just so up and down, I don't know what's considered, like, the scrappy part.
Well, I do know what is and probably the hardest thing about the game is the fact that with the way the controls are set up, your best bet is playing with an actual N64 controller.
Oh yeah, if you're trying to play this one in emulation, good luck. I mean, slight humble brag, but this is one of those games I actually grew up playing back in the day, back in the day as a kid, and I was one of those... I actually got an N64 before I even owned a Genesis, so I know, I'm stupid. I had one of those stupid anti-Sega things going before I was like 10 years old, and I feel really bad about it, and feel free to pelt me with all your sodas. But, you know, as a result of that, this is actually...
that you grew out of that? I don't think that's true.
Hey, no, I'm not one of those Nintendo gremlins. I think that the SNES and the Genesis are both fantastic. And I think the Saturn is quite underrated. And of course, like, all my Sega hate melted away when I got a Dreamcast, but that's besides the point. The point is, this is actually the very first treasure game I've ever played, and I didn't know they had all these awesome games coming in before this. But even if this is to be thought of one of their lesser titles, I don't know if this is nostalgia speaking, but I still really like this one. But it is weird and kind of ugly. I do have to face that nowadays.
Yeah. It's weird, ugly, and admittedly a bit too easy compared to some of the other games.
Yeah, so how is it so good at the same time? That's the riddle I want to propose.
This real charm blending. Like, Nintendo's localization has some spotty grammar points, but it still conveys a lot more humor than you'd expect of localization at the time.
Well, the only other Treasure game that came out that has the same level of humor is on the same system, technically. That both Bang.io and this one really share a lot in terms of having just some real strangeness to the presentation. I guess also because in this game, they do things like they build houses and hospitals out of their stupid stretched Huniwa bricks.
Yeah, no kidding. What is with this? I mean, it's consistent, but it's creepy as hell.
And the way they talk about they're actually like characters that have like jobs and things in the Clancer worlds, and it's like, your house is see-through.
Are they like cannibalizing themselves to make construction materials? The logic, what logic is there? I don't want to think too much about it. My head's just.
I mean, you know what? I only just thought of it. It actually reminds me a little bit of Terraria in that regard. Just the weirdly built-out houses in 2D. It just reminds me of this sort of strange, like, slapped-together look. But it's weird, you know, and it's more interesting, I guess, even though it's not necessarily the best, and you have to
well,
work
I think
hard for
probably
it.
It's a very well-sized video game to be playing as a robot, riding on a cat, riding on a missile, being chased by a wolf on a motorcycle.
Yeah, no kidding. That totally happens during the aforementioned really hard boss fight to hit perfectly, as I said. But it is really awesome, really kinetic. And bonus, I don't know if I should factor in too much social commentary, but, you know, I think Marina is awesome and a rare, actually very notable female protagonist, especially of the time. I also want to say, like, the only other character that's like her is maybe Samus? I mean, I'm sure there are... I don't know, it's just, I think half the game was sold on how rad Marina's design was.
Yeah, despite Dio's porviness, Marina isn't sold on sex appeal.
Alright, and I think we should probably move to ranking at this point and try and figure out where Mischief Makers belongs in the hierarchy, because it's a little tricky, and I think we're going to have to
Okay, well, I think I've already got one place down the way, that would be below Ranger's equivalent to that.
Yeah, if we wanted to compare...
Okay, I think maybe below Bang.io as well. That one's mechanically more competent.
Actually, you know, since we're... Wait, shoot. Okay, Bang.io's at 85. Yeah, and this also relevantly places it below the first Sin and Punishment to boot. I mean, I like Mischief Makers a lot, but it's definitely not the best treasure game. It's just the one that I played first, so I'm going to have to try and cast nostalgia aside in this case. It's still a very fun and charming game, but not the most refined out of Treasure's normally high output. So, with that, where would it actually go?
Like, I'm kind of willing to drag this down a little bit because, you know, this game... It's not their best one, and there's a lot of great games that we have here that do put their best foot forward as much as possible. You know, even something like, say Golden Axe, or our Patreon-ranked Arkanoid game, which is at 87 and 88, respectively. I'd probably recommend both of those games before I would recommend Mischief Makers.
I might too.
A little reluctant to put it too far down because the boss fights as the game progresses are really spectacular.
Yeah, the game does have some extremely rad set pieces that are pretty damn memorable when you get to them.
The biggest problem of all being that the first two worlds are mostly just to teach the player how to play the game.
Yeah, a bit of a slog. And you know, it doesn't take nearly as long as to get into Persona 4, but that's still a bit of a time investment for some, so...
We don't have Persona 4 on the list, you know? We're gonna go
well, now somebody's gonna ask for it. You played yourself.
You have a point. You could probably get through the first two worlds before Persona 4's intro is over.
Yes, that's true.
I don't know if we should cut this part out, because I don't want to provoke getting Persona 4 on here.
No, you're getting it, and you're going to be the only one who's going to play it.
God
That's your
damn it,
penalty.
son of a bitch!
All right, so I want to look at something just a tiny bit around, at least not too low, because I do think that, like, if we say like the back 4/5 or whatever of this game are really solid, that's a solid, great effort. But I can't overlook that it's not a particularly appealing game to look at. I don't remember almost any of the audio in it, so I can't recommend it on that regard.
Not their best musically either, I'll have to say.
So it's a little, I don't want to like push it too high above games that feel like, I wouldn't put it above Devil's Crush, because I think Devil's Crush is,
I don't think I would either.
It's that, so we gotta, we'll move it down a little bit, and we'll sort of look at maybe, we got Pilot Wing 64 here, so we got a 64 game, a little bit lower down, that's at 97. I feel like I could maybe recommend it above Pilot Wing 64, but that would be a complete, like, coin toss in terms of whether I'd be like, today I recommend Pilot Wing 64, but tomorrow I recommend Mischief Maker. This is getting a little bit harder as we go down lower levels.
I would put it above Pilot Wings, but that might be because I am really bad at Pilot Wings.
Yeah. Pilot Wings is
so many times.
Pilot Wings is more of a tech demo, and I like most of the game, but not the hang glider parts, and the hang glider's kind of a big part of it. So I'd say Mischief Makers is better than that. Oh, sorry, going on.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest between Crystallis and Star Wars Jedi Knight.
I was kind of thinking about that area as well, honestly.
I'm okay with that.
I really like Crystallis. I think a little more Mischief Makers, but I'd say I like Mischief Makers more than Jedi Knight. And I like Jedi Knight, but the reason
is the opposite, in that it starts strong and eventually kind of peels out due to its level design, getting more and more obtuse.
Yeah, I think that Mischief Makers, it's a great game. It's just it has problems that you cannot overlook, which is not true of pretty much almost. Treasure's good games, you can overlook any problems they have because it's like, actually, this is still really good though. This one, it's a little tougher to get through, so that I think it's a reasonable placement. So we're gonna, unless anyone has any complaints, but I don't think it matters because I think we've got kind of like at least three people who are like, yeah, above Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2.
And below Crystallis, sold. I think we should just go.
Okay.
So that is putting it at between 95 and 97, I think. Yeah, sorry, 95, 97. No, 95 and 96. So yeah, now it is the new 96, right? It's the
97th, if I'm going by the list right.
I wish
it's
we
97?
had a title bumping everything.
Whatever we have, it's that one, and that's good. Yes, it's very tricky, but okay. So it's the new 97th place between Crystallis and Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. And to sign off, I'll mention, I don't know if you guys mentioned this, because I dropped out briefly, but the coolest thing about Mischief Makers is that when people speedrun this game, they actually turn their controller upside down so that they can more readily mash the boost button. And that's a cool element to this game if you get serious about it.
This is not a game that's comfortable with anything that's not a N64 controller, unfortunately.
Yeah, so definitely, if you're going to play this game, don't even bother emulating it. You can, but you'd feel a lot better if you put this on an N64. It really does play best on N64 with some sort of screen blurring, screen distortion, because that does hash out the rough edges a little bit.
And admittedly, the 360 controller's D-pad just isn't as good enough.
Yeah, it's junk.